All right, so moving on to the next topic, I will be talking about the player, in my opinion, who's made the most amount of noise in free agency so far. And that player is former Utah Jazz player Rudy Gobert. Now, Rudy Gobert has been traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves, as you all know. Now, weeks ago, when I did a segment on the episode when the Mavericks eliminated the Jazz from the first round and Quinn Snyder stepped down as the Utah Jazz head coach, and everybody knew that the relationship between Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell was just about over. They just needed to file in their divorce papers, and it was a done deal. The two could not stand playing together at this point, and they blamed themselves, each other, I should say, for not making the stride to the next step, the next level of Western Conference Finals, or an NBA Finals appearance, or even winning an NBA championship. So this is the beginning of the end of what the Utah Jazz have done for the last few seasons. A tremendous run between them, but strike one was Quinn Snyder stepping down. Strike two is now trading Rudy Gobert. And it's just one piece away from the Utah Jazz starting a true rebuild. So go back, you guys. Go back on our page and check out that segment. But I will be talking about the Timberwolves, and I will be talking about the Rudy Gobert trade and how good will the Timberwolves be next season. So, only 25% of you truly believe that that the Timberwolves won this trade acquiring Rudy Gobert. I think that's false. I think the Timberwolves did a high risk for a high reward. And truly, the way how things are playing out right now, I think the Timberwolves will be a top 4 team next season in the Western Conference. I believe they could get to at least the second round next year and be one of the last 4 teams remaining in the Western Conference next season. Listen, I understand they gave up a lot, and I'll get to that in a few moments, but most of the draft picks that the Timberwolves just gave the Utah Jazz won't hurt them a bit, and it really won't be as effective for the Utah Jazz either, because as long as the Minnesota Timberwolves are a legit playoff contending team in the Western Conference, a majority of these draft picks that they just gave the Utah Jazz will be middle round picks, late first round draft picks. So I don't see the problem for the Timberwolves going all in to make their team even better. Nowadays, this is what it takes to get a superstar on your team if you're not signing him in the NBA free agency. They had to trade to get a player like Rudy Gobert. That's a high risk, high reward situation. And I applaud for the Minnesota Timberwolves for doing this. So, obviously, the Timberwolves are in win now mode. Obviously, you have 2 former first-round picks on your roster, and Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, who both stepped their game up last season and have showed they're ready to take the next step of being an elite team in the Western Conference and being an elite team throughout the NBA and a legit NBA contender, championship contending team. So, obviously, the Timberwolves did give up a lot. They get Rudy Gobert. They traded 5 players, which one of the 5 players were Patrick Beverley. I disagree with trading Patrick Beverley. I thought he brought out the best out of those 2 young players, and Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. And I thought he built a culture for the Minnesota Timberwolves last season. He did one heck of a job. And you can see all the hard work and dedication pour out of his tears, pour out of the team's reaction when they just got a small win, winning a play-in tournament against the Los Angeles Clippers. That meant everything to him. They promised the city to get them back to the playoffs, which they haven't done in a very long time in Minnesota. They did it last season, and I thought Patrick Beverley should have been a part of what the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to do in the near future. So I'm very upset that they traded him in this package, but it is what it is at the end of the day. They traded 5 players and 4 NBA first-round picks for Rudy Gobert. So it's understandable, but you're getting a future NBA Hall of Fame player in Rudy Gobert and a 3-time defensive player in this league. There's not many guys. There's only 2 players in this league other than Rudy Gobert who could say they are a 3-time defensive player of the year in NBA history. So Rudy Gobert is in an elite conversation with being one of the best defensive players of all time. If you ask me, it's a no. And I have said on this podcast several times that Rudy Gobert is a little overrated defensively. But at the end of the day, when you look at his resume, when you look at his all-team selections, when you look at it, how many times he's been an All-Star, when you look at those defensive player of the year trophies, you can't say he hasn't built up a future Hall of Fame resume so far. And has definitely earned the right to have his jersey retired with the Utah Jazz one day. So I really do like the idea of pairing Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert together. If you guys don't think that sounds good, I think that sounds really good. On paper, that sounds like an appetizer. Because I like a big man's game. I like players dominating each other in the paint. That's what I love. I like the flashy passing. I like the flashy shooting. I like everything that comes with basketball. But the paint is what separates you from greatness if you're from good and great if you're a big man in this league. So I like the pairing of Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns together. And it works. It really does work when you pair two great big men together in the NBA today. A lot of teams, I think, are going to pick up on this concept once they see that Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert work together pretty well. I think you're going to see this a lot often in the future. Let's take teams, for example. You have the Boston Celtics who do this. Al Horford and Robert Williams. They're the two main reasons why the Celtics got to the NBA Finals last season. Both of them contributed together on the floor. Defensively, arguably one of the best defensive teams in the league. And actually, in my opinion, I would say they were the best defensive team come throughout the whole entire playoffs, especially when these two were on the floor together. They contributed in a big way, and it paid off. I mean, they went to the NBA Finals, fell 2 games short away from winning a championship this year. I like that duo in Boston. Then you have the Cleveland Cavaliers, who will be doing this for sake of the future, and especially when the big man is healthy. They have Evan Mobley, who was a rookie sensation last season, and Jared Allen. Don't forget they have him. Unfortunately, fell under the radar because he was injured throughout the season, mainly the second half of the season. And I still believe the Cleveland Cavaliers could be a great team, especially with Mobley and Allen in the lineup next season. So that's just 2 key examples of teams doing this. I think a lot of teams are going to pick up on this concept very, very soon. So this allows Karl Anthony Towns to finally move away, because deep down inside, he and all you guys watching and listening know that Karl Anthony Towns is not a true center. Let's call it what it is. He's like, honestly, he's like an Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is a great center, but truly deep down inside, he is a power forward. But Karl Anthony Towns does not have to play the victim and play at the 5 anymore. He could be easily moved to the power forward, while Rudy Gobert plays at center at the 5 now. So I think that's great for the Minnesota Timberwolves to finally move him to power forward, and you have Rudy Gobert at the 5. And it makes sense because to have him as a forward, and I would have said this even if they didn't get Rudy Gobert. I would have said collect a big man who could play at the 5 and let him play at the 4, because Karl Anthony Towns is a stretch big. He can do more than just dominate in the paint like majority centers can only do. He's a shot creator. He's a stretch big, and he's pretty effective from the 3-point line. He's the reigning defending 3-point champion in the NBA right now, winning the 3-point contest in the All-Star weekend this past February. So Karl Anthony Towns scored 153 3-point shots made last season. Now, obviously that's not a lot compared to the guards and all the other players who make 200 or more a season and don't sound sexy and don't look appetizing, don't sound cute. But you're talking about Karl Anthony Towns, who was a center last year, who made 153 pointers. Move him to the 4. This is exactly what the Timberwolves should have did a long time ago. And it's going to be effective. It's going to pay off for them, because while you might have one of your big men in the paint, you could obviously have a little bit of plays and have Karl Anthony Towns waiting to get the ball kicked out to him and pop some threes. Last year, he shot the ball 40% from the field, 3-point range last season. That's pretty good for a big man center who was labeled as a center last season. Now you get to move him to the 4. I think that makes the Timberwolves a much better team heading into next season. So being in the West, the duo of Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert together is scary, since the West plays a lot of small ball. There are some great big men in the West. You're talking about Anthony Davis, you're talking about Jokic. But check this out. The Suns are obviously going to take a step back this year, but they are still going to be at least a top 8 team in the West. Let's talk about them. They're set to lose DeAndre Ayton at some point this NBA free agency. They already lost JaVale McGee in free agency. So what big man do the Suns really have at this moment? These two can bully the Suns, especially in the paint come next season. Let's talk about the Grizzlies. Let's talk about it. You have Jaren Allen and Steven Adams. Which big man duo are you taking? Yes, Jaren Allen is one heck of a talent, and Steven Adams can still go in this game in the NBA today. But who are you going to take? Those two or Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert? I'll let that question sink in for you guys. But Warriors, they have Looney and they have James Wiseman. But again, I like the duo of Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert matching up against them come next season. You have the Los Angeles Lakers. Oh, excuse me. Not Looney. It'll be James Wiseman and Draymond Green. Draymond Green is one heck of a defender, but is he going to lock up Karl Anthony Towns majority of the game when they play? I don't see it. Is James Wiseman going to lock it? We'll have to see. I like that big man duo over those two in Golden State. You have the Los Angeles Lakers. Yes, I just said they have Anthony Davis, but who's playing at the power forward next year? Who's going to play alongside of him? Because he's going to play at the 5 again. I think they're going to take advantage of a lot of lineups next season in the West. And then you have the Clippers, who have Zubac, of course. But it just sounds so good to me that they're going to take advantage of a lot of lineups next season. And don't be surprised when it happens, because I said it first. And I keep going on about teams in the West, but I'm talking about the top teams that come to my mind who will be competitors next year in the conference. So last year with just Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, they took the Memphis Grizzlies to the limit. They took them to the limit. Then the Memphis Grizzlies were the 2nd seed in the Western Conference last year. They took them to the absolute limit and forced, or at least Game 6. And the series could have obviously gone to 7, but still, with just them two, you get to a Game 6, and then you get a mega upgrade and bring in an all-star player like a great defensive anchor, Rudy Gobert. They just got to a lot much better and scarier in the Western Conference, in my opinion. So I like the trio of these three moving forward, of Edwards, Town, and Gobert moving forward next year. Time will tell how much success they can have. I'm not banking on them winning a championship, but I'm banking on them being a collective trio for years to come in the Western Conference. And I really think next year they're going to be a Final Four team. I think it'll be a second-round exit next year in the West. I think they'll be a Final Four team come playoff time next year in the Western Conference. So I think the future is bright for the Timberwolves. This is obviously a high risk, high reward, but we'll see how much this pays off for the franchise moving forward.